Hello, and welcome to PoliticOly episode 38. It's December 13th, 2020, and I'm your host, Stuart, pronouns he, him. I'm recording near the site of the former village of Steh Chass, now known as Olympia, Washington, USA. I do this show because I noticed a lack of local news and politics talk shows with a leftist perspective. It's hard to find a good, quick, weekly news roundup that's not biased toward capitalism or the police narrative. I compile links to stories throughout each week and put them together to share with anybody interested. You're welcome to send me links that you find interesting and you think I should share as well. I'm still learning and improving on video production, but what I'm good at is listening to what's going on from many leftist perspectives around the Thurston County community and beyond, and trying to share that with you all. If you'd like to share your perspective on PoliticOly, let me know. You can always find links to what I'm talking about in the comments below, as well as my Twitter and email links. Just a quick reminder with regard to protests, don't send me picture or video files of protests, things like that. I'm more of a podcaster and not so much a journalist, right? So this is more about discussion, sort of a meta discussion of things. So send me links to things that have been posted publicly, and I'll be able to share that with you all. Let me switch this over from my old slideshow there to the browser, and we'll get right started. So I'm sad and angry to have to bring news of a shooting in our community by a fascist for the second week in a row. The victim of yesterday's shooting is also alive and recovering, thankfully. I'll talk about what happened. I will share links to various sources so you can learn more, and talk about the situation as it stands this morning, as it stands today with regard to fundraising efforts for the victim, and an update on that. However, before we continue with that, a quick update on last week's shooting story. The shooter last week's name is Christopher Guenzler, and when we did the show last week, there wasn't a bail posted, and it was just a preliminary charge, right? So this has been updated. This is the Thurston County Sheriff's Office booking page, which you can look at. It's just public information. So the charge against Guenzler has been updated to assault in the first degree while armed with a deadly weapon. The bail has been set at $50,000 bondable, and that's a pretty significant charge. As I said last week, I think that additional charges really could be filed, theoretically, in my opinion, just based on other instances of threatening and things like that with his weapon, beyond just the shooting. But anyway, that's where it stands right now from the booking information. But so, and when I call Chris Guenzler a fascist, just know, so what that's based on is the political symbology that he uses, including Confederate flags, and his proven willingness to use extreme violence to terrorize his political opponents. There's no need for journalists and news organizations to play both sides when we know the sides. So, anyway. For more on this, you can see my show from last week, and also linked below is a tweet thread from Brian Conley with a quote from the shooting victim and a quote from an eyewitness there as well. So if you want more information about that, you can follow the links below for more details. But moving back to this weekend, this is the booking information for the shooter from yesterday, Forest Michael Machado. The preliminary charge here is assault in the first degree, no bail posted yet. So I will update if we hear more about that, like in the case of Guenzler, right? So we don't know too much about this person yet. I believe he is in his mid-20s, maybe from Bellingham, I think it was, something like that, somewhere, one of the nearby cities in Washington here, and a long-time right-wing, I don't know what to call it, long-time right-winger, right? There was a piece in I believe it was the Seattle Times about with an interview with him, and just like kind of a fluff piece about, oh, what's your experience like? How hard is it to be a conservative in the liberal colleges of Washington, right? So, but that article doesn't look too good in retrospect today. So, definitely when those kind of articles come out, anti-fascists are always warning against that, right? Not to take these things lightly and give folks a platform and take them at their word, because the danger of the fascists is very real. So, I'll just move through various sources here with different information, and as always, there's links below so you can find more yourself and watch the whole videos and everything. I think I'm just going to leave the sound off on these videos and things here and just kind of browse through some sources here. So if you want to watch them with audio, you can follow the links. So just like I was talking about with Chris Guenzler, here he is pictured with the Confederate flag. The slavery flag. So, but anyway, this is one source of information on Pacific Northwest, folks who are violent and dangerous on the right wing. This is WA Nazi Watch, and they share all kinds of information, so you could follow them on there. This is yesterday's shooter, Forest, and there's information about someone else who was arrested, another Proud Boy, arrested yesterday for intimidation with a weapon, and then folks saw police removing rifles from his truck after his arrest. So thank goodness whatever that guy was thinking about doing with those rifles didn't come to fruition. So, and then and so on. So there's all kind of evidence of violence coming from the fascists on here. And even before the events of this weekend, they had been posting about some of the fascists in the area that were likely to be here based on leaked chat logs and things like that, like these fascists pictured here. So go, follow that link, follow this account, and try to keep an eye on these folks who are premeditating violence and bringing that into our community. So next, I wanted to pull up a video here, which again I'll just play muted. But this is from a content creator named InfoPig, who seems to be relatively legitimate, He, on the stream yesterday, identified himself as a supporter of Black Lives Matter, and I noticed throughout the stream an effort to minimize faces of protesters appearing on the videos. So that's appreciated as well. So there's a link to their coverage, and you can go watch the whole live stream or parts of it. But this part of it just shows this guy running up with the gun here, as you can see, and then kind of gets confronted and, I don't know what, chickens out basically, and starts walking back, and then gets arrested. I'll just skip a little bit here, but here he is walking back to the police and gets arrested. And then, like I was saying, they found... I don't know if that was the same person. They found rifles in his truck. I think it was, but not confirmed. So, anywho. But like I said, InfoPig did a multi-hour live stream yesterday with a lot of footage, and you can find that link below and take a look at that for yourself. The next one I wanted to pull up is a video by Melissa Claudio Lewis, who was an eyewitness there. And first of all, this is just one of the examples of violence from the right wing. This guy in the suit throws some kind of lit device. The tweet here calls it a road flare. There are audible references to the Proud Boys by this crowd here, as noted. So this video I wanted to pull up because you can see a clear shot of the shooter's face. Here, let me zoom in a little bit here. And there. That's him right there. Forest Michael. So, anywho, and you can follow the link to watch the rest of the videos there. Her Twitter account is Claudio_report, and there's a few others as well. So, let's see. A couple other content creators I wanted to share, and I'm just going to pull these up really quick and take a quick look, and then again you can follow the link below to kind of really dig through it yourself. But this is at John the Lefty, John with two N's there, and it starts with footage of the march earlier in the afternoon, some of the confrontations throughout the situation there. This one of just a snow machine that down there at Washington Center for the Arts, and protesters are just anyway. But guy in suit cocks shotgun, terrifying. And there's more videos here. Again, you can watch these yourself, but there's audio of the shot here in this one. I wanted to also share, again, that was John the Lefty. This one is Alyssa Azar, who was an eyewitness to the shooting, and basically said that the police weren't doing anything or responding to requests for medics or ambulance And so the police kept shooting munitions at them even when they were asking for an ambulance. And so they were trying to get the victim to St. Pete's Hospital, and while they were retreating to get the injured person to the hospital, the police kept following them and continuing to fire munitions and chemical weapons. Alyssa here says, everyone is still recovering. I have no words for this. Medics told me my friend will be alright. He's a black man who was shot by fascists, protecting other people from getting shot and hurt. Fuck everyone who criticized people coming down to support them. So, of course, my best wishes for the healing and recovery of the victim and anyone else injured. And thanks to Alyssa Azar for her reporting. I also wanted to share Independent PDX, which is another outlet on here posting video. This one is right after the shooting. You can see here, that's the shooter. He still has the gun in his hand. He's grabbing his accomplice here. So this is right after the shooting. And people are hollering at him. Like I said, this is muted. If you want to listen to it with sound, you can follow the links. But this next video is the arrest of the shooter. There he is down on the ground there. Another one I wanted to share is Shauna Sowersby, who was one of the first to post a video with the audio of the shooting. And again, I'm just playing it muted, but you can tell those bushes there. We saw in the other video. So the shooting is up here, a little bit above and to the left of this shot here. It looks like there's just another angle, but you can hear it and you can see some of the other part of the situation there. Next, I wanted to pull up this post by Olympia City Councilor Renata Rollins from yesterday as a backdrop to a general community discussion. So I'll just start with this post and go from there on that. So Renata says, quote, "There's no single narrative about what happened today in downtown Olympia. Resist creating one. Resist enforcing one. I'm sorry for our community that it came to this. I'm sorry for the person who was shot and hospitalized by a self-fancied patriot, and I'm glad WSP, that's Washington State Patrol, arrested the shooter. Honestly, the way things looked out there, I'm really glad it wasn't worse. Armed groups in our streets cannot be our norm. But what's the response? Even sending the police out to keep armed groups in check is just relying on yet another very heavily armed group. Is this the best we can do? I don't think so. What would a trauma-informed, healing community response to this conflict look like? Where does it come from? What truths would we have to accept? Where do we start?" And there's a lot of comments on this. But basically, what we are kind of seeing in the discussion in the community is this sort of framing, this sort of both sides framing where the fascists are, maybe they're violent, but they are just normal citizens who maybe just want to protect themselves and their city. And the anti-fascists are just some crazy violent kids who don't know what they're doing, and they're both too radical, right? And so it's this sort of liberal take on it from the mainstream of Olympia that we see in a lot of comments on this and other social media posts here. And that just really misses the point, in my opinion. And just, I for one really appreciate that the anti-fascists who showed up to defend our community, because I'll never buy into the both sides are violent argument, because the underlying ideology of one side is fascism, and that comes along with genocide and eugenics and warmongering and all the other forms of violence inherent in that. And so anti-fascists are simply gearing up as best they can to defend themselves and our community from that threat. It's vitally important we fight against the idea that we can just leave fascists alone and they'll go away, or there just won't be violence if we don't confront them, because that is false, in my opinion. So I wanted to talk briefly about the fundraising efforts, because I had shared a post initially that was going around by a lot of other accounts and groups for folks to donate to Rebel Alliance medics for the victim. But we're hearing this morning from the community that that RAM group may not have actually got the consent of the victim themselves to collect any money or to do this on behalf of them. And so there's been calls out in the community, and I've shared this and others have as well, to hold off on that and until we figure out what is the appropriate fundraising link that goes directly to that victim and is approved by them. So, however, I've still included the link below to donate to Rebel Alliance medics if you like. I always support, supporting the medic groups, and that's very important. So I think this is just a case of, I just want to make this clear real quick, is I don't think this is a case of bad intent here by the medic group. I think that it was just a lapse of communication or something. So anyway, that's all just rumors, so I'm gonna figure out what is the best link for donations before I share that with you all. So, well, and again, just thank you, my thanks and solidarity to everyone who is out there in the streets, whether you were filming, a medic, whether you were giving people rides or anything else. So thanks for representing. So this is an article in the local independent paper Works in Progress from the November-December edition, titled, "In Washington, People Participating in Unauthorized Militias Are Breaking the Law." And this is by Heather Sundin on November 18th, 2020. And so I share this because it's sort of got some context for this idea that these right-wing fascist groups can gather and practice with their weapons in the militias. And as I've shared on the show before, like American Wolf was showing this video of they're all shooting these big weapons and doing target practice together and things like that. And and they think they're protected by the Second Amendment for doing that, but that's not really the case legally, because the Second Amendment protects the right to a well-regulated militia, and those are unregulated militias, and so they're not actually covered by that. And then also the as it explains here, some of the legal reasoning for that. But basically, when they are doing these training, paramilitary techniques with firearms and all this training and stuff together, and then they're going out to commit violence, that is not a well-regulated militia. It's not protected by the Constitution in the state of Washington. And you can find the link to that video or that article for all the details about that. And, again, these groups are extremely dangerous and we need to take them very seriously. And this article in The Independent, a UK paper, highlights an example of that. The title is "A Member of the Neo-Nazi Atomwaffen Division Jailed for Intimidation Campaign in Seattle." And so you can follow the link to all the details of that, but I just bring that up as an example of the danger from the fascists that exists in our community that we need to take seriously. So I'm going to sort of transition here into some various other sorts of news stories from throughout the week. This one is from the Spokane-based Spokesman Review, titled "Prisoners Protest After COVID-19 Cases Triple and Officers Beat Inmate." And this was at the Stafford Creek Prison in Aberdeen. And so this is about how inmates were protesting and faced a lockdown as the cases of COVID-19 shot up there at that prison from 85 on Friday, this last Friday, to 237 on Tuesday. And this began when a corrections officer used force on one of the inmates. So this is just another example, as I've talked about previously on the show, about how the COVID-19 crisis affects our prison population particularly hard, and we really need to get folks released, because that's a death sentence that we don't have the right to give anybody. And we just have this mass incarceration system, of course, that creates situations like this that are unacceptable. Another story from a while back, of course, talking about unacceptable practices in American law enforcement, right, was these forced hysterectomies on immigrants performed by the ICE detention centers. And now here's an update by Eddie Conway from December 2nd in the Real News about how 6 of those, and this was from December 2nd, but at that time 6 of those forced hysterectomy victims have now been deported. And so those stories are being covered up, essentially. And this is just an example of the excellent reporting that we get from the Real News. I use the Real News all the time. Eddie Conway, who's an executive producer here, is an excellent journalist and has done a depth of all kind of different topics on his shows that you don't get from other networks. And so I just wanted to highlight the Real News there, because apparently they're having a pretty hard time, as with a lot of organizations right now, right, due to this pandemic year. And we saw this post from December 8th by the Real News Network Union, at TRNN Union on Twitter, that, quote, "Today TRNN announced layoffs for 10 of our 18 bargaining unit members. We're still waiting to hear details about how this will affect them and any impact on others in the organization." So that's terrible news. It was awesome that they, had a unionized staff there doing that independent, really high quality reporting, unlike so much of the media. And so if you can help an independent media organization right now, the Real News Network is a good one to support. So solidarity with those union members, and wish them the best on getting a new union gig. So just to briefly talk about COVID-19 update, this is data from the University of Washington, and this is for Washington State, and this is for the daily deaths projection. Here's where we are at right now. We are right about where we were at in the peak of the first wave in April. We're right about back there now, just about, and the trajectory is upwards, depending on the scenario. So this lowest scenario is universal masks. Of course, we are not going to likely see that because there's been so much resistance to that, and a lack of enforcement, and so all kinds of issues with that, and just people going out for the holidays and all these things and being around each other without masks when they're eating and things like that. And so this most optimistic curve down here is unfortunately probably realistic in our situation here in Washington. So we're looking at one of these higher arcs, and this is just terrifying where we are going to be. And if you look, the peak is sometime between late February and maybe mid-March, depending on the scenario here. And so when folks are saying we are in for a really rough winter here, this is what they're talking about. Even in an absolute best case scenario, we are looking at really rough times ahead, and we are not even likely to have a best case scenario. So just, this is a time to take this pandemic extremely seriously, and just do your absolute best to keep things to necessities. And I understand you got to stay sane, but you got to weigh this real heavily right now, making your decisions in what you're doing. So there's a link below to this, and also to more data from this site, which is IHME. You can go to healthdata.org. That's IHME, which is a center at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. That's it, at the University of Washington. So they have all kinds of data and information there, and I recommend you check that out to learn more. And please let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and feelings right now on COVID-19 pandemic, how you're coping, and any questions or discussion points or links that you think we should talk about on the show here. But I'll move on to this tweet here from @JBeware, who quotes this statement here from the Move family. And if you're not familiar, the Move family is a group of black activists, community members in Philadelphia, and they were bombed in 1985. And if you don't know about that history, I've talked about it a little on the show previously, but yeah, if you don't know about that, you should look that up and read about that. But basically, the city of Philadelphia had apologized, right, for that recently, and this is the statement of some of those folks in the Move family, posted on December 7th of this year. This is a statement from the Move family to let y'all know that the Move family ain't interested in no apology from any officials in Philadelphia for the 1985 bombing of our family, causing the murder of 11 of our Move family members, 5 of our children, and 6 of our adult sisters and brothers. If city officials are sincere about rectifying the debacle of 1985, they would release our brother Mumia Abu Jamal immediately. They can't give us back our 11 family members they murdered in 1985, but they can give us back our brother, Mumia Abu Jamal, who has been in prison 39 years for a crime he didn't commit, and everybody knows this, including the mouthpieces for the FOP, Maureen Faulkner. Move is saying that if Philadelphia officials think offering an apology is the answer, they should be offering apologies to the families of Walter Wallace, Winston Hood, William Green, and the families of the countless other victims of police brutality and murder in the city of so-called brotherly love. We're saying an apology without action is meaningless. Release Mumia Abu Jamal. Long live John Africa, the Move family. Next, I wanted to highlight a story in La Resistencia Northwest. Their post here on Facebook 3 days ago, quote, breaking, after 17 months in detention, Rene Ramirez Alatorre released from immigration detention due to high risk of COVID-19. Tacoma/Burien, Washington. Today we celebrate the collective victory of Rene Ramirez Alatorre's release from immigration detention. Rene, 46 years old, had been detained in the Northwest Detention Center for over a year, suffers from asthma and hypertension, which put him at high risk for complications from COVID-19. Rene was released yesterday on December 8, 2020, and reunited with his wife and children, who he hadn't seen in person for 9 months, and who he had not been permitted to touch for 17. Rene was detained 17 months ago when Grant County Sheriff contacted Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, in violation of the Keep Washington Working Act. And you can follow the link below to read that whole story, and I recommend that you do that. But and down here at the bottom, Rene was represented pro bono. So, and that just is a reminder there of how important it is to contribute to immigrant rights attorneys, defense organizations. So, and really all ICE prisoners should be released, of course, and we need to abolish ICE. And La Migra, the Border Patrol, but on the short term, small piece of good news there for one family and the movement. So this here is a letter to City Council posted by Zoltan Grossman, who is a professor at the Evergreen State College and longtime Olympia area activist and organizer. Zoltan says, quote, my letter to City Council, and I gave a 2-minute comment on Tuesday. Some of the documentation is below. On Saturday, Olympia came about 1 inch away from becoming another Charlottesville or Kenosha, as a far-right protester shot and grazed a counter-protester in the abdomen. I and others have warned for many months that this would happen. In Albuquerque and Kenosha, police were seen and heard treating far-right paramilitaries as armed friendlies before the militiamen shot racial justice protesters. In Olympia, as you remember, an officer was photographed smiling and thanking an armed militiaman and was not only exonerated by a typical internal investigation, but actually received an award. We still don't know the identity of her partner that the militia said also thanked them. What kind of signal does that send to residents who have been intimidated into silence by armed men? OPD merely described Chris Guenzler as pro-Trump, and the Olympian just describes armed paramilitaries as conservative. They never seem to mention facts that would shed light on full ideological motivation for violence. On his Facebook page, Guenzler is repeatedly seen proudly carrying a Confederate flag. When the terrorist Dylan Roof, who carried out mass murder in a Charleston church, had the exact same type of photos, it stimulated a national conversation about Confederate flags and led to Mississippi actually changing its flag. But even when similar photos are easily accessible of Guenzler on Facebook, it is somehow not even worthy of mention that Guenzler opposes racial justice not because he is merely a conservative, but because he believes that defending slavery was and is a worthy cause, and backs that belief with violent action. Guenzler is not charged with attempted murder for shooting into a crowd, and no one is yet charged with the assault on the pastor or tire slashings of a street medic's car. Both the anti-fascist allies and pro-fascist Axis powers used violence, but one side believed a segment of humanity were born subhuman because of their race and religion, and the other side believed they weren't. The Nazis killed most of my family not because they were resisting or fighting or committing vandalism, but because they were Jewish. Had the Axis won the war, I and the rest of my family would not exist. Armed fascists pose an immediate danger not only to citizens who oppose them or fight them in the streets, but to anyone who is of the wrong race or religion or national origin or clothing or appearance. It's a double standard for police to quickly show up and deploy tear gas against anti-fascist protesters who may use vandalism, but turn the other way or just don't show up when heavily armed fascist protesters threaten our citizens openly in the streets with weapons and IEDs. OPD and the city want to simply blame both sides, but it has tear-gassed pro-Black Lives Matter protesters at the slightest provocation, without regard for homes nearby. And when armed paramilitaries show up, OPD is not yet ready with reinforcements, or can't deploy the same tear gas because of holiday shoppers blocks away. That's why I don't believe in false equivalents of Antifa activists who might carry out vandalism and carry bats, with heavily armed fascists who intimidate and threaten people's lives. The Center for Strategic and International Studies has found that far-right individuals have carried out 67% of the domestic terror attacks this year. Earlier this year, the center found that far-right murderers have killed 117 people since 2010, and anti-fascist individuals killed no one. That changed when one armed far-right protester was killed in Portland, but what happened to the man who shot him? He was targeted in an extrajudicial execution, an assassination of a U.S. citizen, this time not by a drone strike in Yemen, but on U.S. soil by a federal task force in Lacey. A New York Times report raises questions about whether law enforcement officers made any serious attempt to arrest him before killing him, whereas Kyle Rittenhouse is out on bail. It is important to point out that the inherently violent ideology of fascism and the everyday practice of white supremacy are not the same thing. Not all white supremacists are fascists, and not all fascists are white supremacists, but can include the Japanese who are part of the Axis or death squads in Latin America or the Philippines. The internal investigation of Officer Coates implied that the armed group could not have been racist because it included a black man. But fascists these days are primarily motivated by anti-immigrant, Christian supremacist, and anti-gun reform, and anti-health guidelines beliefs. Overwhelmingly, far-right groups love to display black members who are anti-immigrant or anti-Muslim, or Latino members who are anti-black or anti-Muslim, to help divide and drive wedges. The anti-fascists would not show up without the fascists marching, but the fascists would still intimidate people without any anti-fascists showing up. Shifting that intimidation to the Capitol or Heritage Park won't address the root problem. Olympia leadership needs to consult with groups such as the Institute for Research and Education on Human Rights, who understand the facts about modern far-right groups and don't hold a simplistic and outdated view of the far-right as goose-stepping Nazis or hooded white Klansmen. These modern fascists are a very real threat. We've been warning you for months or years. Will you only enforce RCWs against militias and armed intimidation when the Attorney General approves or if someone gets killed on your watch, and the national and international media asks you why nothing was done to prevent it? End quote. And again, that was Zoltan Grossman, a local organizer and professor. Shifting back to other political news, so this week, of course, was the big announcement that Senator Nina Turner is going to run for Congress. And of course we have an ad here, but anyway, so Senator Nina Turner from Ohio, and I'm sharing this video from Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report announcing that because I think it's a really good take. So I'm just playing it in the background, muted here, but you can follow the link and watch it yourself. And I think it's actually it's really good. And Nina Turner is someone who I have long supported politically, and some folks have some folks have criticized certain things like donations to her podcast by Goldman Sachs and her sort of softball interview with Republican John Kasich, and and of course she's running as a Democrat, which wouldn't be, which obviously wouldn't be my pick if you've watched my show at all, right? I think we need to be done with that and be really building third-party power so that we can have a leftist major party in this country. But nevertheless, we're here right now, and Senator Turner has decided to run as a Democrat, and so that's certainly, her right and her strategic call to make. So I'm still a big supporter because I think Senator Turner is very good at conveying leftist ideology in a moral framework that is simple and straightforward and easy to understand, and she gives speeches that teach supporters how to spread the word for things like Medicare for All and whatnot, and be effective, and so that is good news, and also a good step for Turner if she decides to run for president in the future, as Mike talks about in this Humanist Report video here. So check that out. It's a good video. And the next one I wanted to pull up is so AK Press is a book publisher of revolutionary and leftist works. If you're not familiar with AK Press, you should look them up and just take a look through their book lists there. But this one here is an interview with Richard Gilman. Richard Gilman Opalski, who wrote this book, The Communism of Love, which talks about how basically, I recommend you go and listen to this interview because it's fascinating, and talks about some different things about Karl Marx that you may not know. His first written, published work is love poems to his wife, actually, which is you should go look them up because they're cheesy and hilarious. And so anyway, but this isn't about that. This is about how sort of one of the ways that we experience in our lives a hint of communism or communalism is in our relationships with loved ones, and because we set aside this capitalistic notions of value of exchanges and in how our relationship works, and it's just based on that communalism. And so that is something that can be explored both in the academic discourse around the study of love and relationships, and also in terms of how we think about how we talk about communism and how it directly relates to people's lives and lived experiences. So, fascinating interview there by AK Press, and recommend you check that out. So I actually want to go in a totally different direction here for a second, and talk about something that a lot of folks probably think may not fit at all in a leftist talk show, right? And that is spaceflight and SpaceX. Because this week we had a enormous milestone in their testing campaign for their Starship vehicle, and I want to just briefly talk about this because, in my opinion, this is a huge step forward for humanity, and a lot of folks just sort of dismiss SpaceX and these space vehicle research and prototyping and everything because of the billionaires, because of the oligarchs. They dismiss it as Elon Musk versus Jeff Bezos phallus competition, right? And don't get me wrong, I think Musk and Bezos are terrible people, and we should continue to criticize them at every opportunity. But think of it this way: these new discoveries and inventions and progression in science and engineering capability is really a win for workers, right? It wasn't Elon Musk who designed, engineered, manufactured, tested, and flew this and programmed this vehicle. It was all those workers, right, that did that. And so this was a win for the scientific community, engineering community, and others, and really a miraculous thing here. So if you're not familiar with what we're looking at, this is a test vehicle, and what it's doing is a bunch of firsts. So no vehicle has previously flown this long with this type of advanced rocket engine, which is extremely efficient. No vehicle has flown with three of them working together simultaneously, and no vehicle has done the maneuver that it's about to do. And the reason that it's doing it is because they're attempting to develop a fully reusable rocket, a rocket that is completely reused from the main stage, the rocket stage, because they of course have these Falcon 9s that land that first stage, the bottom half of the rocket as it were, and reuse that. But the top half, they've figured out how to reuse some of the other parts, like the fairings, but not the rest of the upper stages of the vehicle. And so what this would do is make the rocket completely reusable. They don't know the rocket isn't wasted after each flight. It's like the space shuttle in that way, except it would be far, far, far cheaper and safer and easier, and also far more capable as well. And so what's incredible here, and I'll just skip forward a little bit, is so what they did, they launched it and they flew it successfully up to a height, and they flew to where they wanted it to land back on the pad, and then they do this belly flop maneuver where they come down on the side with the wings there in order to scrub velocity and to slow down aerodynamically like the space shuttle did. But of course it's not a plane, it doesn't have landing legs down there on the bottom. It has to flip over back to land on its feet, and so it has to do this maneuver that that's never been done before. And so you'll see here, once it gets near the ground, it lights the engines and swivels them over to the side, called gimbaling, and that flips the rocket over. It stabilizes and then is able to land. Well, in this case, it exploded on landing, right? But it's actually, despite some of the headlines that suggested that that was some kind of big failure, that their test vehicle exploded, it was really an inspiring performance by that vehicle there, and a very successful test. As I mentioned before, no one else has ever been able to perform that maneuver with a vehicle like this. And so just anyway, again, I wanted to bring that up to sort of make that a point of discussion, where I see these things as a magnificent accomplishment of working people and scientists and engineers and so on. And so I appreciate their work and what they are able to accomplish here. Space exploration and space science gives us so many practical applications all over the world, from GPS to all kind of innovations and medicines, and there's a lot of cutting-edge research going on right now in space, in medical research, and that has a huge impact. And so if you are able to put aside your loathing for the CEOs and look at it from that perspective, maybe you'll see what I mean. But I'm curious to see what you think. Do I have something with that train of thought there, or am I full of it, or what? Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear. But I myself personally, I was very excited to watch that. And if personally, I think we should nationalize these companies. I think that what these folks, these workers, as I was talking about, are able to accomplish is really in spite of capitalism, right? Elon Musk in particular is known as a horrible boss, right? There's terrible conditions in all of his companies for the working people, and it's a lot of union busting stuff and all of that. And so it's really what SpaceX is able to accomplish is in spite of all of the capitalism that actually holds it back. And so I think if we actually nationalize these things, and people say, well, the only reason it's successful is because it's a private company and they're able to do it so cheaply. And in my opinion, no, that's not correct. They've relied extremely heavily on NASA technology and workforce and everything, and collaboration and contracts, and they're able to keep costs down by externalizing costs on the government and by underpaying their workforce down on their sourcing chain and contractors and all of that. So anyway, curious what you think about that. So anyway, that basically wraps up my show for this week. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something. I hope you check out the links below, because there really is a ton of information there, and I'm really not able to really dive in deep on every video and article and link, in even the time that I have, which is considerable, right? So if you tuned in, I really appreciate it, and every like and subscribe and share is greatly appreciated. Let me know what you think I should talk about next week, and I would love to hear your perspective. I heard from a couple people about their experiences this weekend. Noah Martin in particular, who has been on this show previously in an interview, was talking about how it seemed to him that the police were sort of coordinating in some way with the right-wingers in how they were moving and operating. And I actually heard that from someone else as well, from a different source. And so those kind of perspectives from folks on the ground are important. And if you have something to share, let me know. And anyway, this is my channel here that I pulled up. You can learn more in last week's episode about last week's shooting by Chris Guenzler. And but previous to that, I've been reading some local indigenous history and messages from Frank's Landing. And stay tuned, because it's going to be 2021 real soon, and we'll be talking about left primary candidates. Hopefully, lots of leftist primary candidates, right? So if you are leftist, run for office, please. And when you do, reach out and come on the show for an interview. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. And again, thank you to everyone out there in the streets showing solidarity. Stay safe, stay together, and love, peace, and solidarity.